Welcome to the B Shifter Podcast. It's John Vance, Nick Brunacini, and Terry Garrison here hanging out, bringing you the podcast today. Fellas, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
All right, good.
Man, I'm
Está muy
excited.
bien.
We're here. It's Arizona. The weather's going to be in the high 70s today.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, so what's new in the world with you guys? I haven't. It's been about a month since we sat down and did a podcast.
Well, we're working on our Silverback leadership program. We're working on function number 3, which is inside-outside customer service. And what we have narrowed that down to really is it's about culture. How do you create a culture of customer service, right? So we talked about in function number, really, it was function number 2, but function number 1, but chapter number 2, we talked about the work. We talked about core services and added value and why that's important to an organization. So now we're kind of focusing on the taking care of the firefighters so the firefighters can take care of the customers, that whole symbiotic approach to delivering customer service inside and outside. And what we're deciding is that culture really is the big deal.
Right.
And people used to come to Phoenix and say, how do you guys do this? Well, it was the culture of the entire organization that was created by Brunacini and moved through labor and management. And it was just a culture of delivering a service and really providing added value. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you do that in inside-outside customer service.
On the 15th, we put out in the Buck Slip, and I should have given you a little more credit for it, Terry, and I didn't. But did you read that the way?
Yeah, you did a good job, and it's not me that you would give credit. Bruno, our first. Go ahead with what you're going to say, and then I'll add on.
Well, I read the Phoenix way.
Yeah.
But I didn't really. I sat through a class that you did talking about how to create that document. So, and that was back at Notre Dame, 15 years ago or whenever it was that you came out there and taught. And after that, I was like, I want to do this. And it's not to legislate the culture, but it is more to preserve the culture and to pass on to those new people, like, this is the way we operate. And this is the way that we've agreed over the last 8 years. And that's really the document that I put together, was a compendium of all the meetings and talks and agreements that we had with each other, that this is the way that we're going to operate. This is our motto. This is our mission statement. And this is why all those things like firefighter empowerment.
No, and you did a great job in your article, I was going to tell you today. And I think the key to that is if you can't write down those things and then share them with the organization, it's not going to happen. So being able to write that down, put in the document the way you did the Minnetonka.
No one gets it right. That's okay.
Sorry. The way you described the way, you did a great job. But Bruno did that for us. And really, it's not a fire chief, and you explained this very well, but it's not a fire chief sitting down and writing that and saying, hey, guys, this is what we're going to do. It's an organizational process that takes place that includes labor, management, firefighters, engineers, fire captains, staff personnel. Everybody's kind of got to adopt that. And whenever you are moving forward some process like that where you want people to adopt it, you got to get their input.
Right.
And then they get buy-in, all those words we talk about in management and leadership. But it really does work by getting their input and then moving forward with it. So you did a great job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
But it started with Bruno many years ago.
Yeah,
I just stole what he had done. And in fact, one more thing about that is that I think that's really where I was most happy when I went to Houston, is that the labor group there was a guy, Kanan, who is the labor president, and he got on board with that right away, and we were able to move that forward. And I couldn't have done it alone as an outside fire chief, or even as an inside fire chief. You can't process that alone. But I was able to get with Kanan, and we were able to take that through the process and get buy-in. It took several months to get everybody's input, and then we ended up with a product that the organization supported.
We ended up with more people on the outs with the organization because they weren't buying into our values. And again, that wasn't chief driven or even senior officer driven. That was oftentimes driven on the company level, that a captain would come to us and say, this person just doesn't align with what this organization's all about. So it's really, you have to have the buy-in. You can't, you just can't write pretty words on a piece of paper and expect it to happen, because it doesn't happen like that. It needs to be authentic.
Well, you use those documents to harmoniously align like the informal and formal leaders in the thing. So the instance where like the companies come to you, or individuals come and say, no, I'm not going to do this. I don't believe in being nice to people, or that we exist to do work, or whatever it is. Well, those people essentially are deselecting themselves then. Mm-hmm. So either they can join the fire department or they can leave the fire department. But over the years, you notice that there's a very vocal minority that will try to run the fire department from the back seat of the bus and say, no, this is what I believe in, and this is what we're going to do. And a lot of it's just political nonsense they're doing. It's stupid little parlor games. And I think the number one indicator of what kind of place the fire department is to work for is how the leadership deals with that vocal minority. And so documents like the way and customer service and I mean, the leadership thing we're doing, we're going to align our business with the work we do. I mean, that's the way it works. That's what we're here for.
No, I think you're right. Once you identify those organizational boundaries, which is the culture and how you're going to operate, you're going to have a small group of people that are going to say, oh, yes, so those are the boundaries. Let me see what happens when I step over that. And they will purposely step over that.
Yeah.
And you better be ready for that and have a process in place to help them back in or have them keep on stepping out of the organization.
Yeah, it's
so
one of
those things are going to have to happen. But once you identify those boundaries, those aren't soft boundaries. Those are pretty solid lines that this is the way we're going to operate. And we're not going to tolerate, for instance, somebody being mean to a recruit firefighter or a probationary firefighter. We're not going to disrespect the customer, those kind of things. And once you establish that and then hold people accountable, I think that's the key. And nobody's surprised by when you do hold them accountable. They're surprised. They should be surprised when you don't. And somebody continues to act up and nothing occurs.
Well, I think it depends. That's really the difference between different organizations is how they manage that piece of it.
Right.
So ineffective, out of control organizations, the fire chief tends to just... They don't manage around the work. They manage around their own feelings and identity and ego. And so a lot of times they'll put up with poor behavior because they think that there's somehow, if I overlook your shortcomings, that's going to create gratitude on your part for you to exist as a mediocre member of this organization. Well, that's not the way it works. And when you overlook that, all you're doing is getting shit on your shoes, basically. And people will kind of figure out pretty quickly, okay, this is what the boss stands for and this is what they don't stand for. And you see it. I mean, it's all over the news. With something bad happens in the fire department, and the first thing the fire chief does is shows up and cries over it, or some kind of act that doesn't support fixing whatever the problem is. Yeah. So things are just allowed to get more and more dysfunctional. And that's a product of just poor leadership, basically. And I really think, sadly, there's more of them than there aren't across the fire service. Yeah. I mean, you just kind of look at the world today and what's going on, and you just scratch your head over some of it. And you think, this does not connect to the work we're doing. Why are we doing it?
Well, I think that word way was chosen by Brunacini pretty specifically because this is the way forward, without getting too cosmic or religious about it. But this is the way we're moving forward, the way we're going to act, but actually the way we're going to go, the direction we're going to go.
Like it's both a noun and a verb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that was perfect. So if you get off track and start heading in a different direction, you need to get back in. And there's people that it's with safety. And that's the other thing, too, is that this has to do with culture. It has to do with culture of how we treat each other and how we treat the customer and how we treat our resources. But it also has to do with safety, and I think that's what we're doing too. Is we're adding safety back again to the Silverback leadership program, and the inside-outside customer service has a safety component to it also, to where the way we're going to act on the fire ground, the way we're going to do our job and do it in a safe manner and provide that service to the customer.
Well, executive level safety is when you're responsible and you lead the organization. When part of your work occurs in IDLH hazard zones, it is your responsibility to ensure, to create the systems and training and everything else, support, so the members of the organization survive those encounters. Like their ongoing safety and survival is part of the regular incident operation. It's embedded into it. Because it's a hazard they face every day potentially, and so you've got to run the fire department in a way that causes everybody who began their shift to finish their shift. So then there's a lot of obstacles to that. A lot of people think, well, no, it's noble to die in the line of duty, and you think that's a misdirected thought right there. We don't have an SOP that says here's the noble ways for us to die while we're on duty. There's none of that. And if you took that to the authority having jurisdiction, they would probably send you to a psychologist pretty quickly and say, why do you want to kill the workers? That's not what we're here to do. We're here to deliver service to the customers. There's a disconnect, and I mean it's hundreds of years old. But those are the things that the executives who manage the fire department, that's part of their job description, is to keep the workforce healthy, at least, so they can deliver the service. You'll notice that when there's a mayday that occurs on the fire ground, we're not delivering service anymore. That all goes away. Everything goes away until we solve the mayday. So to say, okay, we're going to risk ourselves because that somehow puts us in a better light or makes us feel better about ourselves, or, the survivors feel better about it. We both are familiar with the fire department that used to hire twice as many recruit firefighters as they needed to start an academy. So if they needed 20, they'd hire 40. And then they would fire half of them during the academy. And we asked the fire chief, why do you do that? He says, well, training thinks that when you get rid of half of the firefighters in the class, it makes the other half feel that much better about themselves that they were able to survive the gauntlet. You thought, well, what's that cost? I mean, it costs twice as much to train twice as many when you only need half. So why won't you just hire people that you were pretty confident, because back in those days, you had a pretty big herd you could select from. So you had no shortage of candidates.
No, I always thought the first accomplishment was getting hired and making it to the training academy, because you had to go through quite a gauntlet to get to that.
I mean, that was a year-long process.
5,000 people, and they hired 40 off the list that I was on, 43 of us. I think I was probably number 43, but that felt like an accomplishment. Now, I wasn't going to obviously stop there. None of us were. We were going to, that got us in the door, and now we needed to move forward and prove that they made good choices, right?
Yeah.
So, but to hire and then to get them geared up. And like I said, I was in an organization once where you didn't get your actual fire helmet till you got out of the fire academy. You got a plastic helmet, because why would we spend money on helmets for guys that were going to... So, I mean, it impacts everything when you hire people knowing that you're going to fire half of them. That's just... And, if I was an HR director or a finance director within that organization, the city or jurisdiction, I go, no, what's going on here? You guys need to get better at your hiring process, because your training academy is going to be what it's going to be.
Well, that sends the message to everybody starting is, okay, the way we're going to manage this is we play a lot of games in the very beginning. And those are all just designed to build up our self-esteem and confidence and egos. So, in fact, it's all artificial and fake. We pretty much do this as window dressing. So we know who we're going to keep and who we're not. I mean, when you get into the politics of hiring a recruit class, as many of the people in that class are connected to up into the food chain somewhere with people that are going to say, no, you may fire half, but my people are on the other side of that line.
A lot of the last names are the same.
Yeah.
We have had recruit class in Phoenix, and I don't know at what point, but they said you have to have like a company ID for your recruit class. And this particular class had a lot of relatives of direct descendants of very high-ranking people. And there was enough in the class that they went to their captains. They said, we want our fire recruit shirt to say the lucky sperm. And they said, no, we can't do that. That's inappropriate.
But you said, just so we can kind of cover that whole topic right there about hiring family. That because they're family doesn't mean they're going to be bad firefighters.
No.
Doesn't mean they got the jump. Like you were saying at one time, somebody had talked to you, and you'll say better than I do. But you were hired. Oh yeah, Chief's kid gets hired. Well, you were reading Firehouse magazines in the shitter when you're 6 years old because that's what your dad had.
Yeah,
I mean, you learned about the fire service, and that's what you wanted to do early on. So because you were the fire chief's kid, you shouldn't get knocked away from the process.
Yeah.
And there's organizations that used to do that. I don't think they do that anymore.
Well, truth be told, I really didn't want to be anything when I was growing up other than a Chevy pickup truck. That was kind of my. And then when I became old enough to know that wasn't a viable option.
You wanted to be a pickup truck?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up.
I wanted to be a sandwich.
Well, watermelon would have been great. That was my favorite thing in the world. But at some point, you figure out, well, I got to do something for a living. And, I tried this and this and this, and school sucks. And so you think, that's a pretty good gig. They work one 24-hour day, and they got 2 days off. And they spend most of their money on cars and hanging out together and having a good time, and then the rest of it they just waste on things like pensions and other stuff.
But you knew about the organization.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't go in blindly.
Oh, no. I knew more about it than the captains who were training us at that point. See, and that wasn't so much for my dad. It was for working for other firemen in a position where you could serve alcohol to firefighters.
You're a bartender.
Yeah. So that was really better than getting a master's degree in mental health. Is becoming a bartender and
So that
4 or 5 years of.
So the way back to your original kind of where we started is it's important.
The way with liquor.
Because if you have that document out there and that's part of the hiring process, there was a time when we said, okay, you're going to study this, but you're also going to take this. This is the expectations for the organization moving forward. That helps in the selection and the hiring process. So you use that throughout the entire organization, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I would go through that during the orientation. So however long the orientation was in the first couple of days, I would sit down with the new group.
Oh, the fire chief did that with them. Okay.
Yeah. I would sit down with everybody and say, this is what we figured out, the way that we're going to operate. And if you are going to stay here, this is the way that we expect you to operate. And we welcome you into this, but it's got to be, this is the way we do it. And
they all say yes. And then you watch them, and it's not always yes. They say yes, but you can identify pretty early on the people that are going to help others.
See, but I'll go back to what you said earlier, Vance. Is like your captain goes back and says, "Well, my engineer won't do this." Well, you know that going in. It's the older people that say, "No, I don't." If you get that from a recruit, that's the easiest one to fix it all. Say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. There's the door. You leave. You don't work here." I mean, why would I plant weeds in my garden that are just going to keep sprouting? It's like, no, I know. In fact, that's what the whole hiring process should be set up to do, is to support intake and the right people that will do the work.
That's it.
So the guys, the members who refuse to abide by that, I think are just being assholes for the sake of being assholes. Like, you can't tell me to be nice. You're not my mom. And you're like, well, obviously you don't have one because you were never taught to be nice. So you never got these lessons. And we're serious about this. And if you've said it before in these things, you can manage people's attitudes and behaviors because they show up in
actions.
Exactly. So like incorrect action is based on either poor training or a shitty attitude, or two of the major ways that you get crossways like that.
You're right.
So like an older member of the organization, well, let's say that the new fire chief says, no, we're going to redirect this and we're going to go off the work. Well, that's going to be harder because you may have a bunch of people that said, no, the old system, we could be, that it didn't, this wasn't the goal. This was the goal over here, whatever that happens to be. So now the challenge becomes pulling the workforce in that direction. Well, you're going to have the like-minded that help you, right? And so they're going to be pushing too. So the mixture of the old ways and the new ways is you got to have some patience with.
You do.
So you got to say, okay, I understand that we haven't always operated this way, but the old ways cause these problems, and we're going to fix them by doing this. So we're going to be somewhat patient getting you over here. But just like if you're fundamentally an asshole all the time, you're going to deselect yourself from the organization. That's what the way says, is your behaviors are running counter to us delivering the best service we could deliver. Because you upset people, you show up on calls. We talked about in the last deal where like you got the guy settled down, but you gave him a cigarette and that made him calm. And then the paramedics showed up and derailed it. And you're like, no. 2 firefighter paramedics don't get to do this to the scene. This isn't. You're not cops, so quit acting like it. So, in fact, maybe we should send them that way. If they're too mean for us, maybe they could go over.
They're going to end up with them eventually.
Yeah, exactly, one way or another. Yeah.
Well, so every item in the way has to have a why explained to it.
Yeah,
and that's what you were getting ready to do there.
Yeah.
Is when you were talking, I was thinking, you got to explain the why. So with some of the people who've been around a long time, like they called them, I think they called them old heads in some
dinosaurs.
No, they could just call them old heads. They've been there a long time.
Oh, geez.
Dinosaur just doesn't want to move.
Yeah,
but
dinosaurs
old heads are guys who've just been there a long time. And
so they're senior members.
Yeah, senior members. But you got to have a reason why for the young people coming in. Mm-hmm. This is why we do this. And for the old people, here's why we're changing to move. And you said it very well. I mean, it impacts a whole lot of things within your city, your jurisdiction, your fire department, your community, your forthcoming pay raises, your relationships with people in the street.
Well, those are all tools that the leaders use to get the organization there. But so you guys talked about the way. We had the way in our organization, and then see, and these are all cultural documents, which is more powerful than rules and regulations. So the culture is the bottom line. This is the way we do things around here, despite the SOPs, the rules, and everything else. So, like, culturally, in a system, let's say that nobody stages. We just culturally have never staged at the scene of fires. Well, that's something you need to change if you're going to kind of implement a system where you can manage a single incident action plan. Well, you're going to have old heads say, no, we don't, and so you explain, like you said, why you stage, and they think, well, yeah, I understand all that, but we manage this in such a way where we don't need to. And you're like, well, do we really? I mean, all the problems we've had over the years, I can track back a fair number of them to the fact that we don't operate with the single incident action plan and everybody's kind of their own boss on the fire ground. So that's just as an example. So what we ended up doing is they created the way for just kind of the culture of dealing with each other and the public. And then they created, you were the chairman of that, of the safety guide, the green book, and saying, no. In fact, this is the way we manage ourselves and we hang out and do our business together. The safety book this is the rules. These are the rules that you cannot break. In fact, it says in the book, supervisors are not empowered to overlook infractions of these rules. You have to enforce them because when you don't, people can get injured and killed, and that's horrible, and we don't want that to happen. So that kind of becomes the leadership piece of that, of getting that through.
And the great thing about that book, too, is you said I created, but I was actually...
Well, you were the
facilitator.
You led the effort to produce it.
So what happened is Bruno called me in one day as a new battalion chief. He said, I got this idea of a fire response that starts in preparedness all the way through to when we leave the fire scene. And these are the stages I think are critical. He goes, can you go out and meet with every fire captain in the organization and get input into filling in these areas? So I said, oh, yeah, great. So over the next few months, I met with every fire captain in the city of Phoenix, groups and then individuals.
That had to be like a couple hundred
Oh
people,
yeah,
right?
it was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So we would have, I mean, I was working for the fire chief and I was trying to accomplish this, and the battalion chiefs would sit in on it. But I was looking for the people who actually did the work and led the organization. So they had the first input. Later, we went back and got firefighter engineers input and battalion chiefs, but we started with fire captains. And it was wonderful because they filled that in. So, what are the important things what are the important things as part of a response when you're driving there? And they would give what they thought was important. And every once they pretty much lined up. There wasn't a lot of surprises, but every once in a while there was. But the statement that you said was the best statement, is that on the very front end of that book, is that you said it very well. I can never say it exactly correctly, but my dyslexia gets in the way of my thought process. But it's supervisors are not empowered to overlook safety procedures, and command officers are not empowered to follow up on those safety violations.
They are empowered. The command officers have to follow up on those.
Command officers have to.
Yeah, they don't have a choice.
So what happens is it kind of says, when you make a mistake, I'm going to tell you made a mistake, and then we're going to help you through the process. Now, nowhere in there it says you're going to beat the snot out of them and it's not recoverable and there's no second. It says you have to.
Terry, like 75% of the time, like in an after-action review, the member just rats themselves out. It says, I shouldn't have done this. And then you're like, in fact, you almost have to do the opposite.
Yeah,
say, no. It's easy for this to happen. This is why we do it this way and this way instead of that way. And
after action report or after action was part of that.
Yeah.
When you would tailboard or major, whatever.
Exactly. A quick review of how did this go? What parts could we fix? What parts don't need to be fixed? It's just a good practical thing to do after you deliver the work.
So that document and the way, and then we can add yours in there because it's got a little different style. People have different styles, but we'll add that to our Silverback leadership program, and then people have access to that. We'll probably talk a little bit about it during our conference in October, maybe hand out something to do with the...
The other one we need to find is the customer service guide.
I'd like to see that.
Because at the same time, so we started the way, it's just, okay, here's the culture of the Phoenix Fire Department. This is the way we treat each other. This is the inside. And then we use the same family, supportive, work-driven approach on the inside, on the outside. So it all matches. As we don't have to be schizophrenic to deliver service. So we're not treated horrible on the inside, and then we're expected to be really nice on the outside.
Yeah, exactly.
So it all lines up. And then what was crazy is then the next was, okay, that's good here. Now we have to define the rules so we don't get killed and blown up. And that's really good. And while that was going on, the union of all people said, okay, this is what the service on the outside looks like. This is why we're here. In fact, what they really said is, this is what we negotiate your benefit package on, is you doing this for the customer. Yeah. And then we go back and then talk to the customer's reps, and then they give us raises based. So this is a food chain. This is how we monetize this as the union. So what we did is and like this leads up to like 2006, 2007, where the economy boiled, the Wall Street destroyed the mortgage industry, and the whole world was going to go to shit hungry. Well, so we get there, and then one of the like poster children of became firefighter salaries and pensions, and they were like, how do firefighters make this much? And who authorized these pensions? And you think, well, we negotiated them over the last 25 years based on the service we provide and what the citizens wanted, because they're kind of in charge. So, well, that's all good and well, we understand it, but we have to beat you to death now because we need a sacrificial lamb in this whole thing. Because we can't hold Wall Street responsible for destroying it because the politicians allowed that to happen. So anyway, it all comes back together. But the way out of that is just keep doing your job.
Well, Nick, every service delivery encounter, you're being evaluated.
Oh, yeah.
So the best thing to happen is for a supervisor to ensure that the performance goes in a positive direction, so he or she can fix that on the front end if they think something's going to occur. The worst thing that can happen is that a customer tries to fix you by evaluating you. Like you talked about your service at a car dealership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every time that I go to McDonald's with my grandson, or go to a car dealership, or go to a grocery store, or whatever, I'm without knowing or not, I'm evaluating how is this person who's working there treating me as a customer. We all do that, but for some reason, as firefighters, we forget that same thing is occurring across the table from us, and those people are judging everything we do. Why wouldn't we want to?
Well, sometimes we think that when we show up to deliver service that we're like just doing somebody a favor.
Hero.
Yeah, and they're like, well, no, we're going to come out and evaluate your real need of your emergency, and we'll let you. No, man, that is a government. That's the typical government stereotypical approach that everybody hates.
That's a driver's license bureau.
Yeah, exactly. That's not who the fire department is. As we show up, and if your emergency really doesn't require us to do much, that's what we should do. That, and that includes not scolding the customer for calling you over. You just explain to them, okay, this is going to be, maybe drink some more water, get better sleep at night, whatever you can to kind of get them in a.
Yeah, I've had firefighters that are surprised when they're not getting hero worshipped on calls. And it's like, they're having a bad day, man. I mean, don't expect every call to end with a pat on, we get a lot of pats on the back, but I think some firefighters get to the point where they feel like they're entitled to this adulation every time they leave the building, and it just doesn't happen. And we have to educate them on that too. Like, you're going to go to people having bad days, and they're not going to treat you very nice. Get used to it.
Yeah. I think that's the real bonus in having a crew. I don't think police officers have that. I think they work singularly, and when they have a bad day, there's nobody to go, hey, we got a crew there, and you told stories about how your crews helped you. I've had my crews help me. It's like, hey, Terry, let me handle this one. Why don't you back away a little bit? Right? So I think, because most firefighters, they'll correct the other fire. If you make that an organizational, cultural, important thing to do, other firefighters will say, hey, step back a little bit. Let me take this one. If you, as a leader, don't give a shit about that, it's probably not going to happen at the lower level where people will correct each other, because it's not important.
Well, one of the indicators of a healthy crew is that they keep doing that, like reinforcing and helping each other out. And as the boss, like, if you notice, okay, I'm doing it's starting to get to me, I'm starting to twitch again, but the crew isn't intervening on my behalf anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe I have taken this too far.
Taking the crew with you.
Yeah, well, and they're like, well, no, there's a whole set of critical factors of just getting through the day socially, of kind of figuring out, okay, this is where we're at, and this is where we need to be, and this is how I moderate and mediate myself in the thing.
And to take it one step further, I had a driver when I was a battalion chief and a shift commander, Sid Norwood, Vietnam era veteran, go out and smoke near the vehicle when I go talk to people. And he died a few years back. But anyway, he was my moderator too as a chief. He'd go, hey, Terry, come here. You weren't very nice to those guys. Or, hey, these guys. So it's always nice as you move up in the organization. As a fire chief, who do you count on to tell you when you're being an asshole? Like, your spouse probably will, but she's not at work with you, or he's not at work with you. But really, organizationally, you need to find somebody that you can, and don't rely on the police chief, because they will. No, not another agency.
That's like relying on the budget director for.
It's got to. But somebody within your organization, it'd be nice that you had somebody that can tell you, and don't be offended. But if you have. I had Miss Pat Ogilvie in Texas, and she would walk in. She was a woman who had worked with 4 or 5 fire chiefs in Houston Fire Department, and she would come in and tell me what she thought of the way I was treating people, and she was pretty much in line. And I would thank her at the end of the day. Say, thank you, miss. In fact, I talked to her on the phone a couple of days ago. I haven't seen her in 10 years, and we still stay in contact. And every time I do, I say, thank you for helping me through.
She's from Houston, right?
She's still in Houston.
Well, Terry, you could tell the bosses in Houston need to talk to her some more. They're not doing as well.
She would tell you exactly what, and she was respectful. And she was Miss Pat.
Maybe Miss Pat should be the fire chief.
Pat's awesome.
We all need that.
Yeah.
I've had that the opposite way. It was during COVID. We had to let a firefighter go. I mean, this guy was a probationary firefighter. Just wasn't the first fire he goes to. He jumps on the back of his captain. And he's going to ride his captain into the fire. That's just one of many things that this guy. It was just the wrong profession for him. And sometimes I always say we miscast people, right?
Yeah.
We put people into roles they shouldn't be in. So it's during COVID. We've got the face masks on, and I'm sitting there with the operations chief, Kevin Fox, and shout out to Kevin because he kept me on track for this one because I had the opposite problem, right? I've got a bleeding heart. I feel bad for people. No. So we sit the guy down and say, hey, it's not working out. We've had all these issues. And he has a tear come down and he goes, wow, this is the second job in a row I've been fired from. And I start feeling for the guy. So I make eye contact with Kevin.
There's a reason.
And Kevin just shakes his head
Kevin kicks you in the knee really hard.
Like, you keep going. And it's like,
don't talk.
Okay,
Don't talk.
Look at
the
stick to the plan. So we ended up, going with the plan. But Kevin regulated me because I think if that would have been on one-on-one conversation, I might have given the guy a fourth or fifth chance, whatever chance he was on. And it wasn't going to work out. It clearly wasn't going to work out.
No, and along those lines is I've seen fire chiefs that their command staff won't tell them what they're thinking. They won't tell the emperor he has no clothes, right? We're seeing what happened with that. And don't tell the fire chief that you disagree with them. Yeah. No, you got to tell the fire chief you disagree with them. Isn't that why we're here as a command team to tell the fire chief?
Yeah.
Well, JV, you talked about firefighters who show up on calls and they're somewhat taken aback that they're not idolized as the hero. As I showed up and I've got perfect teeth and great hygiene and I've got the love in my heart and the whole deal. Well, that becomes fatal when it's the fire chief that is thinking, okay, this is all about me. It's almost like entitlement. I'm the chief now, and now I'm entitled to do whatever the hell I want as the chief, and this whole organization has to support me to those ends. And you're like, no. You have completely screwed this up, and now you're going to take them down a place you don't need to go. It's about the work this organization does, not you being in charge of it. See, both of us, we've all worked for fire departments. None of us work for those fire departments anymore, and they still exist. So to think, okay, I'm the fire chief, and this isn't going to work without me is horseshit. Alan Brunacini quit being the fire chief in 2006, and the Phoenix Fire Department kept going on. They never stopped existing. Wow. So that's kind of what you owe the organization as an employee. It's like, no, I'm going to come here. I'm going to be a valued member of this. I'm going to do my share of the work, and then I'm going to be a positive element moving forward and leave this in a better place than I found it.
No, what was that old saying? Success isn't final, and failure isn't fatal. And so you see some people where they promote so they can do less, and really promote to do more. So you can, and you hear people say that. What do you want to promote? I want to do more for the organization. I want to have a bigger impact, and I want to reach a group. That's the guy you want to promote. What do you want to promote? How much do we make? That guy you don't want. But I think you're absolutely right. There are people that get into those positions, and I think, okay, now I can rest. I don't need to do anything. And fire chiefs go from organization to organization doing that, and they don't last very long.
Well, no, I don't know. I see it a lot because we've been doing this for a while now. We're like 30 years into this. So we deal with fire departments, and those fire departments are all made up of firefighters and chiefs and whoever. And the example I keep using is we're doing Blue Card in the North San Diego County. and all the departments are showing up to go through it. And it was like a year long. We did 3 or 4 trainers during that time. Well, one of the first groups came in. Right before class started, I met a chief from another department, and he says, hey, I just came by, blah, 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 say hi. And one thing led to another. I said, well, how many you got in class? He says, none. We got nobody in class because our fire chief isn't a big fan of what's going on here. Okay. We heard a lot of that. We still do. So, like, a year later, same group of people, 3rd class. Guy, hey, how you doing? How's your chief? Blah, blah, blah. He says, I got 4 guys in class. I thought, well, your chief? He says, yeah, the chief's gone. I'm the chief now. So, and that's what happens. And you see it, well, that works the opposite way. Like blue card, okay, we do blue card, and then you come back and, we got a new chief. He hates blue card. And you think, well, okay. That person is the chief for a while. They go away. 3-4 years later, hey, we're back. So you're like, so you see, okay, these people are transitional. They're like you said, head coaches in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So once they go, then it opens the door to do, like, okay, we can make some changes now. We can improve the organization, do whatever we're going to do, and off we go. So it's pretty bad when your tenure as a member, a valued member of that organization, is they throw you a big party because they know as soon as you clear the door, they get better. It's like that they're gone, and now we don't have to dance to their ego anymore, and we can do what we need to do as an organization. So, I mean, that's just, well, those people go off, and they're the least self-aware. They're like, well, I left another mark, and you're like, yeah, just like you took a shit in the middle of the apparatus bay and walked out the building, buddy. That's the mark you left on the organization. So we've all worked for fire chiefs. We're like, yeah, a good chief, and then the one behind that was more based on their own personal screwed up psyche. And you think, well, this isn't sustainable because none of us feel that way about you. We think you're a moron. So we're not going to covet and do the rest. We're just going to go off and do the work. And
the way we survived that was by focusing on the work.
Yeah.
And continuing to be nice and continue to treat people.
The work is the truth.
Yeah,
that's the only way you're going to be set free. So you figure out, okay, this is what we do, and then people try to minimize that. Oh, we don't do what we used to. We used to really make a difference, and now we go on these stupid calls. And you're like, no. When something bad happens in the community, we go all the time. Yeah. We are the community. We never leave the community. If there's a natural disaster coming to town, the on-duty shift's going to ride it out. They may hunker down or take high ground and try to ride it out, but they're not leaving the zip code. It's their...
More than once, I've been in the basement of a firehouse when a tornado is going through town, and so much so that then you get members of the community that stop at the fire station because they're seeking shelter.
Yeah.
And you're telling them, hey, we might have to leave, but you can stay here as long as you want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This really is a good segue to our question for the day. We do have a question.
We have a purpose?
Yeah. And I think it brings us up to it beautifully. So we have somebody who wrote in and asked us, hello, Silverbacks. I enjoy your podcast, and thanks for sharing your experience and wisdom. I am a new fire chief who is taking over for a legacy fire chief who is retiring after over 20 years at the helm. Our chief has left our organization with great resources, a healthy culture, and a roadmap for the future that includes additional stations and staffing. You often talk about the lack of leadership, but what advice do you have for me, not only to continue the great stuff our retiring fire chief was doing, but also establish myself as the new leader of the department? Sincerely, Mr. Green Chief. So
Green Chief.
What advice do we have for the Green Chief?
So by the way, congratulations, right, on your new position. And what an opportunity to follow somebody who did some great things and not have to come in and fix everything, because that's no fun either. But I would think of that person in a little bit. I'll start here, and I know we'll all go around the table. But the first thing I thought of is IC number 2, coming to an incident. You got a hazard zone. You had the IC number 1, everything's going really well. IC number 2 comes in. They need to check and verify from their position now. They need to reach out, get more information on what they thought was going well. talk to a lot of people. For instance, I would gather information from the labor group, from firefighters, and from staff members, and then also your bosses. But you gather more information because there might have been some things that you didn't know that were occurring that weren't occurring exactly the way as great as maybe you thought they were, and you can improve on those areas, or you can say, yeah, that's a great area, I'm going to keep moving in that direction, and then you have conversation with those people about that. And then you're going to kind of look and see, just go through that kind of a decision-making model with them. But, we changed command, IC number 2, to improve it. And when you come into that position, you have an opportunity, as good as it is, as well as everything's going, to make some improvements in that with your own style. Don't change your style, but certainly don't throw things out and just make change just because it's the right thing to, because it feels good. And it sounds like he doesn't want to do that. It sounds like they want to keep the program moving forward. But also go back to each one of those programs and ensure that they're moving in the right direction, because what happens is, and if they still have momentum, because now you got a chance to take a program that's been in place for a while, whatever that is, and add some new energy to it. If it's something that's like customer service is happening really well for that organization, you're a new guy, you could add some positive energy into that and move it forward and get some more input moving. You could do that within that whole system there. So I would go back and I would take the time to check everything, make sure that what I thought was occurring, and then outline small improvements. But you don't have to just throw everything up to make your mark. In fact, it's better for that guy coming in if he just takes his time and really moves that organization forward off the other guy's mark. And I would, just like wherever I go as a fire chief, wherever I've been, I take Brunacini with me. Mm-hmm. I have Brunacini right here, and I throw him out all the time because everything that I learned from him, all the programs, the way to treat people, how to interact with government officials, how to speak to firefighters, all that comes from Brunacini. And I would throw his name out there. And I would use that as, and I think any Phoenix firefighter who's gone on to be a fire chief, and you've heard you say this before, owes it because of Chief Brunacini.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where you went to school, basically.
Yeah.
It's no different to say I got my master's in business.
He's our mentor,
and
he. Now, I did things different. I had a different style sometime than him. But
you were taller.
I was taller, so I could see further.
Yeah.
And I got wet first when it rained.
Exactly.
Other than that.
Yeah.
But I do. I think that person's got a great approach, and we'll talk about it more and more. But the first thing I would do is, like an incident, and you're coming from the field, you got that number 2 position coming in, is reevaluate everything, go through that decision-making model organizationally and make sure everything's lining up the way you want it to go, and then improve on all those areas. Is that too generalized?
No, I think that's perfect. I mean, I think a lot of times new leaders want to pee in every corner and leave their mark and show that it's a much different organization. And sometimes maybe you need to do that because the former leadership in some cases, and we pointed out a lot, was dysfunctional or not appropriate or was taking the organization down the wrong road. But in this case where it's very positive, I would say, yeah, build off the positive things and don't change for change's sake. Don't go in and redesign the patch or get new colors on the uniform or I need this badge. And, we all have this sense of what we would like, right? And I've seen it happen with chiefs over and over again where the new chief comes in, oh, I like this style of helmet, or I'm going to change or I like black turnout gear. We're going to get black turnout gear for everybody. So yeah, it's like you're playing with other people's money now. So you're going to make all these big decisions. I don't do that. I don't think this guy would, but don't do that. And that's a human ego path of least resistance. If I can afford to do it, well, I'm going to do it, right? And don't save it for later.
So what this person is coming into is, I think, more difficult in many ways than leaving when a guy gets fired. Say a fire chief gets fired or he gets run out of town, or the authority having jurisdictions want to move in an entirely different direction. And you sit down like I did in one agency and said, well, what do you want? What are your expectations for the new fire chief? And she said, I want this, this, and this. And I said, yeah, I can do that. I sat in on another interview and they go, I want this, this, and this. You go, no, I can't do that. Our buddy John Hinton went on a fire chief interview. He wanted to go to this city in Northern California more than anything. And the very last question they asked him was about decreasing the number of people on a fire engine to 3. Would you do that? And he's like, no, he didn't get the job.
Yeah.
He's lucky he knew that up front. If they would ask him a week after he got hired and he would have said, no, that would have been a problem. So, but coming in when everything's going nice and smooth, it is a little bit more difficult to make your name if that's kind of show your presence a little bit. But there's a lot of ways to do that, right?
Well, and you go to organizations where it's not about you. It's about the department.
What an idea.
Yeah, it's about the department. And I use this one as an example all the time. We were just at FDIC and a couple of guys from the department came up and visited us. Charlottesville, Virginia. There was a fire chief there named Julian Talafero until 2006. And he was the fire chief for 30 years. Very much a Bruno kind of guy. I mean, I'm sure the two had met and talked before because he did I-Chief stuff and everything and was known. I mean,
they may have been from the same island.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah,
Sicily.
Yeah, they really could have. But that organization to this day still reflects his leadership in so many ways. The way they treat the retirees. You know, we were doing a blue card train the trainer there, and we walked in, and there was black bunting at the fire station. We're like, oh my gosh, you know what happened? And they're like, oh, a retiree passed away. It's something that we do for the retirees. And I mean, when do you hear that? And when we saw retirees coming in and the young people getting coffee and stuff for them, they were working out every day. There was just so many positive things going on in this organization. And that's because the next fire chief passed it on. The next fire chief, I think they've had 2 or 3 fire chiefs since Chief Talafero retired, and he still comes around. He pulls in and visits with people, and it's very much an open environment like that, rather than this is the end of this era. Now we get to do all the stupid stuff that we wanted to do throughout the years.
Well, you guys are doing this from the chief, coming in as a chief. I was never that person. So my experience is like, okay, the chief is gone and now there's a new chief. So what do we expect out of the new chief? Well, the other part of this is we all knew each other as well as you could know another person. Truly. I knew both fire chiefs really, really well. And so you have a certain set of expectations when the new one comes in. And that's not what I saw, really. I thought, nah, this is a whole different thing. This transition between the old chief and the new chief has not been designed around the work we do. That's obvious. And really, the problem there is the new chief disregarded the work. Pretty much, to the point where there was a group of us who had worked quite a bit over the last few years doing things that we were somewhat proud of and the rest, and thought, okay, this is a valued thing. And then you come to find out that what that was is that, no, you guys just did this so you would have this power that we need to take away from you now. So, and they called it shock and awe, is we're going to take the fire department over with shock and awe. And you're like, well, you assassinated everybody in your staff, essentially. All the chiefs got together and you reassigned everybody and did everything. And this wasn't about the work. This was about you letting us know that you're in charge now. Well, the problem is we know you really well and you are not really in charge. So I mean, you can't bullshit the people who you rode in the boat with all the way up till you got out and now I'm in charge of the kingdom. You're like, no, pal, I can tell you what this is going to look like 6 months from now, and it's going to be on fire inside, and that's kind of what happened. So really, sitting in the cheap seat, you're like, okay, if you will hold people accountable for what they're supposed to do, that's where I would start with, as being a member of the organization with the new chief coming in, is how is your tenure as our leader going to do with my ability to deliver the service that I'm here to supposedly do? Because that was the condition of my employment leading up to this, is if you could do it on the calls and then not be dysfunctional and too big a troublemaker inside the firehouse, then you did well. You got patted on the head and they gave you a cookie and said that was a good call and keep that up. And so all of the positive stuff that you were receiving up to the transition of the chief. So like this guy is in a pretty good position. It's harder because it's tougher when you can only fall down instead of, like you said, we're like, okay, now I got to pick everybody up because the last chief was so bad. Well, which is kind of what happened after one chief left and the new chief, and then it's been a subsequent that they haven't progressed the organization. So, and I think most of the people in the culture of the organization is the indicator for that. So when the culture's like, no, I'm waiting to get out of here. So one of the things we noticed during our 10 years, probably most of us where we worked, is people doing math to stay like past 30 years. Mm-hmm. And now you don't hear that. It's like, no, I'm out of here as soon as I can get what I need to get. I'm hitting the road, man. I'm out the door.
I get so bummed out when I see that, too. The people with the countdowns on their phone where it's down to the second.
Oh,
yeah.
No, they were doing that before I left. And I mean, some of them didn't have offices because they were still wondering the shock and awe piece. I'm still no longer, I can't find my position in the org chart. And that was on purpose. Yeah. Well, that chief didn't, in fact, he's still not doing well. He's still going backwards in things. And so, and I think a lot of that is he just made some bad decisions with who he was going to listen to. And, okay, I'll do this, and then they'll love me. And you're like, nah, you were never really. You were loved the day you took the job, and then it just got worse. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things. So what you guys talk about, that's very important for the chief going in. But for most of the organization, it's like, okay, I have to be supervised now. Mm-hmm. That's what you give us. And
Nick, did you have hope, though, going into that? Like, before shock and awe day happened, a couple weeks leading up to that, did you think like, yeah, this is going to be okay, or we're going to continue on the way we're doing things, or were there indicators?
There was a lot of uncertainty, but, I really didn't care at that point. I mean, we're tenured. We had our time in. It's, what are you going to do to me? It's like being an old inmate.
I was surprised. I thought it would. I thought it was going to kind of keep going the way it did. And
it was shock and awe.
Yeah. But, so...
Not to interrupt. The only only good thing they could do is keep a secret. That's the only skill set they had. Because like day two of their deal, it's like, wow. I don't know how you guys kept this under the lid, but well done there. I don't know how you're going to act this out and make this work, and they couldn't. That was, they hit the ball over the fence like the first 3 minutes, and then it turned into a shit show. And it's hard to recover. They're still looking. The city is still looking to put the resources in they need to get response times under 9 minutes in parts of the city. And that's what you lost, is the ability to do the work. And over the last whatever period of time, is like little things, they'll make improvements, but it's...
any organization where you think about labor group, right? So when I was in Houston, I went through a few labor chiefs there, and the ones that weren't very successful were the ones that wanted to change everything. The ones that, like right now, they have Marty linked in there. He's been there quite a while, and he wanted to keep things going in a pretty positive direction because things were going okay. Mm-hmm. He made some changes, but he had a plan and took it forward. So I think any leader that goes in, don't create change just so you could put your name on something. You said it better than it made me laugh, pissing in a corner. Mm-hmm. I got a new dog. Mm-hmm. And when I got him, he was pissed. It's like, what the hell is he doing? He's literally pissing around my house. I had to keep my eye on him. It's like he's trying to mark the territory. A new fire chief going in, when I went to Glendale, I made a statement that I didn't realize that I made. And it went around the organization, and I said, I'm happy to be the newest Glendale firefighter. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as that. It's like, I really was happy to be a new Glendale firefighter. And I met a guy with 2 years on. I said, hey, how's it feel? You got seniority on me. And they thought that was the biggest deal because they were used to fire chiefs coming in. And I didn't do it for that reason. It's my personality, right? And they were used to fire chiefs coming in. There was a fire chief that I followed in Oceanside who had the largest brass. I mean, they look like hubcaps.
Yeah, for the Cadillac.
Yeah. So, are you the fire chief? You can get a bigger uniform buckle or whatever the hell that is.
He should have worn one of those night helmets.
If he could have, he would have.
Oh, I'm sure we've talked about the fire chief that welded the 6th bugle onto his collar brass. Seriously, happened. It was a major city that had a lot of suburbs around, and he wanted to show his ass to everybody else. And so he put a 6th bugle on, and I had him custom made for $1,500 at the taxpayer's expense to have a 6th bugle.
I remember we had our awards banquet one year, and the next day, the engineer on A shift who drove the pumper had got the firefighter of the year award, and it was a big ribbon, red, white, and blue ribbon, and this medal that I don't know, it had like genitals on it even, and he wore it to work as part of his class, his regular fatigue uniform. He's wearing a blue T-shirt with this medal on, and it was a rough shift. It was a horrible shift change that had tears, and I think people set shit on fire. It couldn't have been better.
Being humble as a fire chief is that's a good personality trait to have.
Need to be.
You got to be, and what humble means is listen to people. You don't have the answer to everything. Listen to what people. That's the other part of that guy coming in. He needs to listen to people, and really he may find some things out. Listen to the workers, listen to the labor group, listen to the bosses, as much as you don't want to hear from some of the finance directors and the public works guys and other people that you're working with. Listen and get a sense of how you may see one or two little things like, yeah, that needs to change a little bit, or I need to tweak that, but you got to have a reason why you're changing it, and the reason should be to improve it, like IC number 2, and it shouldn't be, I'm going to change it just to change it. And the other thing you said, when you said we all know each other, that single level entry where we all come in as firefighters, whether you're not in that organization or not, they're going to learn about how you were as a firefighter, a fire captain, a chief officer, is just be consistent.
Yeah, like I guess it's one way to say it, but the fire, all the leaders in the organization, many of them, I knew well enough that you knew all the felonies that they had committed in their life. I mean, so you can't pretend you're somebody else all of a sudden. It's like, oh, no, I'm the fire chief now. It's different. So, like, being the fire chief, you've talked about this before, like, one of your staff does something stupid. Like, they're the assistant chief in charge of personnel, and all of a sudden, they're getting the Firefighter of the Year award. Yeah. And you're like, no, you can't be part of my staff. You're an assistant chief. We don't give ourselves awards. Yeah. This is for the workforce. This is not for us. We don't. Yeah. Now, if the workers all get together and say, no, we want to give this chief this award for this reason, it's a whole different thing. But if you're the head of the committee, you say, oh, yes, that award should go to me because
you're padding your resume at that point.
Well, that was the last official act he did.
As a chief.
Yeah, so he went back and got to be something else. I mean, that's where he doesn't belong in that position because it ain't about the organization anymore.
Not when I was there.
No, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're going to stop now with that, probably.
Well, one more piece of advice I would give, because somebody gave it to me, is you're going to get all these ideas your first year or so, because now you're looking at things through a totally different perspective.
Right. Yeah.
Than what you had before.
You're paying the insurance on it, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this advice was take copious notes. Write down all your ideas, all your thoughts, Don't act on them unless it's like a safety issue or something. Then go back and review and see what you actually want to change, especially if things are going good. And that really helped me chart the path for the next 10 years, was all those ideas and thoughts and conversations that happened during my first year, because that's a fresh pair of glasses that I'm seeing things through.
Well, Vance, and the other thing that you did is you didn't have to do so much on the inside of the fire department. A lot of your progress was made on the outside with the AHJ of describing, this is where we're at now, and if you want to go forward, this is what this looks like. And if you don't want to go forward, don't do anything, because it's just going to go back. So, I mean, you don't... Alan Brunacini said you never stay static. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. But
It's like the fire ground.
Exactly. There's no tie.
That's why I tied to that.
Offensive operations do not take more than 10 minutes. 99% of offensive operations are over within 10 minutes. The ones that go beyond that, you have to have a robust system if you're going to be in the hazard. But, I mean, that's just... So, I got a lot better when I figured that out. It said, no, there's not a 60-minute interior firefight. That's bullshit, made up noise by people that don't do this regularly. So they're playing dress up. No.
You know, you made me think of something. So also a new fire chief or a new leader going into whatever, think about, be a little more calculated, because you're coming from a position of where when you make decisions on the fire ground, you don't have a lot of discretionary time. But as a fire chief moving in, you got discretionary time, because I tell you, it's kind of like if you were ever a medic, the first thing they teach you is when you give this person this medication, whatever it is, it has these positive effects and these side effects. And the fire chief's decisions are often like that. Is you think, oh, this is going to work out perfect. I'll just do this here, without thinking of, oh, how does this impact this over here? So that's when I would never make change to a workstation without including those workers' input. Why would you not, if you're going to impact the firefighters' work, which is what we should be doing, is focusing on the work, and you think you're going to change something to improve their work, get their input first, because they may tell you, oh, chief, here's what that's going to cause over here. And I found that to be true in training, is that if you don't focus on the work and training, and if you can chase your arse around in circles in training, trying to get the right training person, the right training program. That's why I really like Blue Card, is because that incident command training focuses on the work. It's consistent. If you could get that same type of style throughout your entire training system and then tie that to operations where it impacts the work, and
then be focused on it.
Well,
that's the focus of the organization.
That is a huge thing that should be in fire chief school. It is like aligning the organization.
Yes.
It is, because that is a reoccurring problem in many fire departments, is the training division has a vision. This is what incident operations should look like. So they go down the road and train the department in that. And then they get about halfway through, and some ranking member of the operations division sits in the training and says, no, we're not going to do this ever. And you're like, how can you can't, right. The training doesn't run the fire department, but it runs the fire department. Ops relies on training to train the people that work in operations. Yeah. So the easiest thing that I think is training fits under ops. I mean, that's kind of the way Blue Card got set up. Is you thought, no, there's the guy responsible for training he got to fit under operations, because he's not supporting, and now it turns into this contest and fight, and you're like,
I've got several examples of conflict where two equal ranks. One was a training officer or the training chief, and the operations chief were at battle all the time because they're competing with each other. You've got to have it aligned.
I have to tell you, every organization that the three that I was able to be fire chief in, first thing I did, I had to hurt the training chief's feelings, or I promoted that training chief to the executive ops. Mm-hmm. But you have to align those two. And once you do that and you get past that growth process, and they start working together under the same vision, the work, so many problems go away.
Yeah. Truly.
That was a sidebar, but that was good, Nick. Yeah.
Well, it's one of the things the fire chief has to deal with and a lot of times, JV, those two positions are competitive to be the next fire chief. So so you add that to it. It's like, no, I'm leaving in 6 months, and they both put in for the job. They're not going to work together. I mean, it's okay. Now I'm competing with you, and then there's going to be a bill to pay with whoever comes to chief. And I mean, we saw that when we lost one chief and the new one came. He says, these three guys put in. And you're like, well, no, they did that so you could get the job. They have to pay the price now. And you're like, man, you just blew your brains out. It's going to take 3 or 4 years to catch up, but you just committed suicide, pal. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. I mean, I stayed long enough to watch it and thought, nah, it's not going to be pleasant at the back end of your life. It's karma.
Good luck to that guy. He's fortunate, but he has to be careful moving forward. And he's got a great opportunity to improve it a little bit, but he doesn't have to change it completely. And he doesn't have to do everything right now. He's got a little discretionary time. He'll see some things he needs to improve. He makes his mark by putting the fire chief uniform on. He doesn't have to march around him.
Show up. Just show up, man.
Dude. You got play your position within the organization and try not to
learn your people.
Well, just do your job. Like you say, you guys say it all the time, process. Use the process. Whatever process you've developed, that's the way you make dinner every night. Just keep doing that.
Use your personal power, not your professional positional power, and it'll be wonderful. In fact, be nice if you forgot you were the fire chief sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to help people.
You're in charge of making sure the organization can do their mission, period. Yeah. That's what the fire chief's role is.
The only time I really wanted people to know I was a fire chief is when I was talking to my boss or the police chief or the HR director or the finance guy. I would wear my uniform so they know, now I'm the fire chief. I'm not, I've come across goofy, but I am the fire chief of this organization. But as far as the people I worked with and the people that it's like they knew.
You know who I am.
And they know, those people knew what you represented in it. They know where he's going to show up and he's going to say safety and service. That's all the son of a bitch ever says. Customer service and firefighter safety. That's what I do. And see, they can't tear it apart. As they took our rules, our one page of rules, and they gave it to city legal, and they said, we don't like those. Why? They're because you can defend them, and lawyers don't like stuff that you can defend. There's not enough of them, but they're too powerful. And said, well, okay, good. We're going to keep them then if the lawyers don't like them and they help me be better.
All right, timeless tactical truth.
Hey, now.
All right, let's do a timeless tactical truth from Alan Brunacini. Apparently, there's a fire apparatus that plays this when they go down the street in New York City.
Oh, tremendous.
Probably nothing to do with us, just they like the yodeling.
No way.
Yeah, we just found out about that. Okay, today's timeless tactical truth. You will resent and resist any supervision you receive you don't need. You will resent and resist any supervision you receive you don't need. One of you guys said that's like being married, right?
It's the first thing I read that, it's like, oh my God, that's any relationship, right? And I'm trying to read it from way over there. It's any relationship where somebody may be in a position to be your supervisor, but they're not all knowing, right? And you need help sometimes from your supervisor, but if I don't need the help and you standing over me telling me what to do, I will resent that. And we do it all the time. I mean, that is something that is true throughout your entire life, right? Not just, the guy behind you in the car that thinks you're going too slow, I resent him because he's thinking, he's trying to supervise me. Hey, dude, you can't even drive your own car. Now you want to drive mine? Get the hell out of my way. I mean, you think about that, but that's throughout your entire life. You resent any kind of supervision you don't need. And people feel, especially nowadays, it seems like people want to supervise I'm at the age where people feel like they need to supervise me. Look at that old man. Hey, use the left door. I know what the freaking door to use, dude. I'm walking, right? Whatever it is. But you throughout your entire life. I don't know. I went on a tangent there.
Well, it's micromanagers. Nobody like working for a micromanager.
No.
And you're like, no, leave me alone. You don't.
Well, what did Bruno say?
He said a lot.
No, when he said, tell them what they need to do.
Yeah, show them how to do it.
And get out of their way.
Give them the tools to do it and get out of the way.
Yeah, and then when they're done, review how it went and make any necessary changes.
Or say, good job. Do it that way next time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
even better.
In fact, a lot of times he'd say both. Yeah. That went really well. Great job. Next time, let's tweak this part of it over here a little bit and see what that develops.
Now, that doesn't say that supervisors should never direct people. Right? Because if you look at that sentence, and that may be looked at a little bit different we talked about the training academy. I'm a new firefighter and I'm trying to learn my role. I need you to tell me how to do this. I remember a fire captain, Chuck Hudson. I love that guy. Station 33, just the most professional guy. I remember going to a firefighter, I was 19 years old at the fire station, and we had the bathroom where the shitters. You'd sit there and look directly at the pisser in front of you. There was no doors on it. And he came in to
It was Roman-style pooping, baby.
He came in and take a leak one day, and I'm sitting there as a 19-year-old guy, and I'm thinking, oh, this is embarrassing. And he decided to tell me the best way to hold my toilet paper in case we get a call.
Oh, my word.
He said, Terry, make sure you get some. You pull out a couple bit there. You put it on your lap, because if we get a call, we're going to go. And I'm like, thank you, Chuck. Yeah. And I thought, that was really not necessary until the day I needed it.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm glad I had that role there.
You know, his brother, Tom Hudson, was the captain, taught me how to play pitch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a booter at Station 10.
Good guys.
Oh,
but there's some things.
He was an excellent teacher.
He literally told you how to wipe your butt.
He said, we're going to get a call here. We're very busy. And he said, you need to have your toilet paper out, sitting on your lap, ready to go, because we're not waiting for you.
Yeah. The funny thing that wasn't a tailboard talk. That was in the bathroom. I was coaching you in the bathroom.
As you're currently in the middle of pooping.
As he's shaking it off. Because he looked down and he noticed I didn't have that there. And he thought that he was going to help me. I don't know how I got on this. You may want to cut that whole thing out.
When I was younger, I never liked back in my day. But if these guys knew how these communal bathrooms worked, I mean, it was horrible. Because I think we all had them, at one point. The same thing is like, why do we have 5 shower heads in here? Are we all actually going to, is this Porky's?
Oh, I remember.
Are we going to all shower at the same time?
You hate when people say the old stuff. But I remember being in the military at the age of 17 and going in the bathroom for the first time and seeing 30 toilets lined up with no walls between them. And you would sit there and your knee would hit the knee next to you. It's like, oh my gosh.
I'm in the Army now.
So anyway, that was a long story. Anyway,
well, thanks, guys.
We're trying to have fun.
This has been a great conversation today. Thank you very much.
So?
And I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the P-Shifter podcast.
Well, it's been a conversation, Vance. I will give you that.
I enjoyed it.
Well, that's all that matters is we had a good time, God damn it.
We'll talk to you next time.